Hey everybody, early this morning, about 4:45, Danielle and I woke up for an early morning radio interview. We had a radio show in London that we were doing an interview with, that's right, the United Kingdom. And the topic of the conversation was, is the church keeping singles single? And it was a phenomenal conversation, and in the midst of that dialogue, many questions came in that we did not have an opportunity to answer. But one came in through Facebook, and I want to read the question and then address it. So here's the question. Most brothers are not bold enough to approach sisters. How can the church help? When in the world, they easily approach ladies, but as they become Christians, they struggle to do that. What is your take on this? First of all, I think it's a phenomenal question, and I think it speaks to a number of different issues that the church is currently struggling with. Let me first say this. The church as an institution overall is one of the biggest advocates and supporters of marriage, okay? But the challenge is the church has been guilty of criticizing, condemning, repudiating, and reproving all things that lead up to marriage. So somehow we're supposed to go from hi, my name is, to I do. But there are many stages and phases and seasons in the in-between time between date and mate. And if we're not clear on what those are, it's going to be hard to really embrace these transitions and give the support that singles need in order to enter into marriage. And that's why I think so many singles are remaining single. So there are 4 seasons to a successful relationship. The first season is what I call the dating season. That is the selection process. Season number 2 is committed courtship. That is the getting to know you phase. Season number 3 is engagement. That is the season of preparation. That is when a man is preparing to be a husband and a woman is preparing to be a wife. And season number 4 is marriage, which should be the final frontier. And the challenge that we're seeing is that, unfortunately, the church embraces the last 3 seasons, committed courtship, engagement, and marriage, but struggles with this concept of dating. Because dating is not a term that's in the scripture, and so it's not really supported. And when you think about dating, you think about it from a worldly perspective. And many people who are in the world who date oftentimes have sex. And so because that is something that we as believers are not supposed to do until we're in the confines of marriage, we kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. And so rather than giving biblical principles that can kind of guide us in this dating phase, which is an important phase because it's the selection process, we wind up throwing out that entire process, and it's kind of weird, and we're stuck in it with what do, what do we not do, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate when it comes to really meeting and interacting. And so sometimes grown adults who are single are reduced to almost grade school children in terms of knowing what is appropriate and feeling comfortable in their interactions. And what I think the church can do, to answer the question, what can the church do to help men approach more women? I think that we can create an environment that's more conducive for men and women to interact beyond having lessons or services or sermons where we talk about how to become successfully single. Now listen, a singles ministry should be there to kind of guide people through a process of, all right, you're in your single state, this is how you should live to be successfully single, but most singles I know want to know how to be successfully married. So you've got to talk about the transition. You've got to talk about the seasons. You've got to talk about the opposite sex, how you interact, what kind of conversations you should have, what fellowship looks like. Because if you don't give people a roadmap and if you don't make things perfectly clear, then it becomes very confusing, what to do and when you're honoring and dishonoring God. And I think that's where the challenges come in. There's a culture within the church that says, not up in here. Meaning you don't come up in the church to meet and greet. You don't come in the church to date and to find your mate. That's not what this is for. This is a place of worship. And so a lot of men are very apprehensive to even move forward when those become the ground rules. Now, as men, we're pursuers, we're hunters, we go after what we want. But when we enter into an institution that says, no, not up in here, it really puts the brakes on us. And so you find a lot of men who wind up pursuing women outside of their specific congregation and may pursue women in others, or they may go into worldly settings. Not to say that they're dating worldly people, but they're going into the world because the world embraces interaction between men and women the way that the church does not. And I think that we've got to change that order around because it's causing a problem. And I think, once again, if singles ministries and the church overall had, get-togethers, social events, just things that were pleasant and easy for men and women to congregate, I think it would be more advantageous for both partners to find companionship. And really, from a biblical perspective, I think sometimes we take scriptures and we take them out of context and we make them something that they're not. So there's a scripture in the Bible that says, he who findeth a wife findeth a good thing and obtaineth favor of the Lord. And somehow we've principalized that particular scripture to suggest that it is strictly 100% a man's role and responsibility to pursue a woman. And a woman is not in a position where she should pursue a man, look at a man, make herself noticeable or anything. And so people sometimes take that scripture to the extreme. A woman should not even look or seek to find a mate. They should be pursued by a man. And while I understand the principle, what happens is there's so many women who don't even make eye contact. They don't even smile. Their body language gives off a completely different message than how they're feeling internally. Now, when you think about the fact that communication is a powerful thing, your words are 7% of your communication, what you say. Your tonality, how you say what you say, 23% of your communication. But your facial expressions, your body language, and your gestures, 70% of your communication. And so if your facial expression, body language, and gestures are giving off a message that says, leave me alone, I am not available, even though within your heart you want to be pursued, then you're not going to be approached. And if men who are always rejected feel as if they're going to be rejected because of the air and the message that you're delivering, then they're going to be very, very apprehensive to approach you. But let us not forget, there is a scripture in the Bible where Ruth and Naomi presented themselves before Boaz. So here you see something totally different than what the principle that we've made a principle even suggests. So I think it's okay for men and women to meet each other, to greet each other, to say, hi, my name is such and such, and to develop friendships. And if the friendship leads to something more like a relationship, then so be it. But I think that we need to do a better job of letting people know it's okay to interact with members of the opposite sex, because it doesn't mean that if you do, you're sleeping with that person. It doesn't mean that. And I think that that's the path that we need to begin to go on in order for men to be more open, for women to be more open, and then all of a sudden, all of these qualifiable men and qualifiable women in the same congregation can transition into healthy, productive relationships. That is my answer to the question.